Bob here, Chopper Bob Customs. Thanks for watching the videos. If you've subscribed, thanks for being a subscriber. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel. We'd like to have you on board. Like the videos, we like to be liked, and hit that notification bell so that you know when new videos are coming up, and comment. Tell me what you like, tell me what you don't like, ask questions. I try and get back to folks as soon as I can. So I'm back at work on the 57. There's some things that I did without videotaping it just because, one, the access was horrible, and two, I just didn't think it was all that interesting. I pulled the 4-speed out of it. That was fairly straightforward. We've taken the hood off of it and sent that home with the owner so that I can get in there and do the work that I need to do. Obviously, I've set it down on the ground. I still need to, I've done a preliminary adjustment on the toe in and the ride height. Obviously, the ride height, I've got a engine with aluminum heads versus the iron heads that this car had on it, and I've got a 4L60E, which I believe is quite a bit heavier than the Muncie 4-speed that was in it. Although with the cast iron bell housing that this still had in it, that might not be the case. So I want to get it basically put back together and then set the ride height. And I'm not going to be able to set the toe in perfect, but at least I can get it so he can take it to his favorite place to get it aligned. Beyond that, yeah, today I thought I would go ahead and do the instrument cluster work. I also didn't do a video taking it out because it's not typical. Usually if you're taking one of these out, chances are you probably got a stock column still in the car. This has got a GM, most probably Chevrolet, tilt column in it. I'm going to have to look at it a little bit closer. I think it's actually a floor shift tilt column. So, but I got to get it out of there because he's going back with the stock style column. And then I've got to figure out what I'm going to do about the floor mount for the column and how I'm going to adapt all that. At any rate, so I didn't videotape taking the instrument cluster out. This is a 57 instrument cluster, and basically it has a left turn signal indicator, the generator indicator, oil pressure indicator, and a right turn signal indicator. And then it's got a fuel gauge and a temperature gauge, and then of course the speedometer, which has the high beam indicator in it. And I don't know whether, let me see if I can get this in there close enough that you can see it. The plastic on the Speedo is all crazed, and the indicator lights are in pretty sad shape. And he has decided that what he wants to do is go with a Dakota Digital analog gauge set. It's a pretty nice looking gauge set. It's got a speedometer cluster that I believe, as far as I can tell, has the turn signal indicators, the high beam indicators, and then the oil pressure, volts, and tachometer as a, I'm assuming, a digital display right in this area right here. And then he's got the temperature gauge and the gasoline gauge. So I'm going to be installing that. Of course, one of the biggest challenges with this is I'm going to have to integrate the tachometer reading, the oil pressure I think the oil pressure reading, the tachometer reading for sure, and most probably the speedometer with the Holley Sniper fuel injection system and then also the MSD 6AL. I think he's putting a 6AL in this, and then the controllers for the 4L60E, because that's the electronic transmission. So, but for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to really quickly take this apart, and I'm not the first person in here, as evidenced by the screws. It's got a combination of clutch head, flat blade, and Phillips, and none. So I'm gonna see if, part of the reason that I didn't, I'm gonna have to go get a wrench for that. Part of the reason that I did not videotape taking this out also is the fact that it wasn't installed properly. This is supposed to have 4 screws, 2 here and 2 up here, somewhere, right here, 2 here. And then it's supposed to have 2 nuts with washers right here. Well, it had these 2 screws up here, and it had this screw right here. This screw was missing, and both nuts were missing. So it almost fell out. So I didn't see any point in videotaping it. Most probably the hardest thing to do was to remove the speedometer cable. It was a little bit sticky, and you got to get your hand up in behind the dash to get that disconnected. The good news is since this is all electronic now, I pulled the speedometer cable out, and the owner of the car took it home. When he took the transmission, the hood, the starter, all stuff that we can't use on putting it back together. So basically what you do is you take these 3 clutch head screws and the 1 non-screw screw out, and then this should just slide right out of there, just like that. So there's the stock speedometer with 39,637 on the odometer. And you gently, oh no, there's, take that back. There's a couple of flathead screws that hold the lens in place. And I'd almost like to say that that's original, except there seems to be 2 of them missing on the sides. So there's the retainer ring that holds it in place, and then the lens itself. And at one time it had a bit of dum-dum in there, probably to keep it from rattling. So you reuse the bezel. I'm going to go ahead and take it inside at lunchtime and clean it up, because it is really kind of nasty. 2 screws that hold the fuel gauge. Now, a note on this, when the light lights up inside of this ring, there's a lens down here at the bottom that illuminates the, let's see, on this side it would be the cigarette lighter and the ignition switch. On the other side it's got the same thing that would illuminate the wiper switch and the headlight switch with a very faint glow, but they've gone ahead and just painted over it when they painted the whole dash. So I'm gonna have to see if he wants to have this illuminated. I'm not sure whether the Dakota illuminates it or not, but if he does, I'm gonna have to figure out how to get that paint off of there. going to have to look at the Dakota instructions. So once again, I'm going to take the screw out, the one screw that's holding the temperature gauge in. And its ring and its lens. Okay. And then the other thing that I am going to do is I am going to pull the bezels out so I can get those cleaned up. But I'm also going to take out the indicators. And the reason I'm going to do that, Dakota gives you the choice of either going ahead and using these so you can continue to use your turn signal indicator and you can continue to use your oil and charging system indicator. But with that being said, since these are in such bad shape, and since the unit itself covers that, I'm going to go ahead, as part of the Dakota kit, they give you block-off plates that you can put in there to give it kind of a custom look. It's basically just a highly polished black button that instead of the generator and the turn signal indicator, it's got a very nice little black button that gives it sort of a custom look. Okay, with that said, the unit is stripped down. I think I'm going to break for lunch and go in and do a little bit of cleaning. And when I come back, we'll see about getting this reassembled with the Dakota parts. All right, so I've got a little bit more cleaning to do before we start putting this back together. The one thing I'm not 100% certain of is whether or not the Dakota Digital actually illuminates this ring. But I figure if it does, I would sure like to have that the switches and the cigarette lighter illuminated by the lens that's on the bottom here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with some 180 grit and just get the paint off of it. And it looks like they actually primered it. So, and of course they're not flat, but they will be flatter once I'm done here. Okay, so 180 grit, then 400, then 500, and then some polishing cloth. It's not perfect, but then again, this isn't a show car, and the goal here is not to make it look perfect, but to make it look better. And I think that if the Dakota Digital gauges actually illuminate, this will make sure that the parts that were intended to be illuminated work. I'm not sure whether the customer wants that or not, but I thought, you know what? It sort of adds a 50s flair to the vehicle. And so to that end, I went ahead and did it. I still got a couple of bezels I need to polish up here. here again, I don't want to lose sight of the goal. This is not a full-on restoration. If it's a full-on restoration, you'd probably want to send these out to a professional to have them polished up. Some of them actually need to be replaced. The trim around the entire instrument cluster has got pits in it. I mean, and it's just, I don't know whether a person could polish it out, but it would require some significant polishing, and it's fragile enough that I'm not sure it would hold up. I don't know whether they reproduction this piece or not, but the goal here is that we want it to look good, but we don't want to make it look out of place with the rest of the car, because we're not really doing anything else to the rest of the interior. So basically, I just kind of cleaned up the cluster so that it didn't have dust and schmutz on it, and basically it's got chips in the paint, so on and so forth. If he decides to paint the column, he can probably get a color match on the column. But now, one thing that I have done is I've polished up these bullets. Here again, not so that they're show quality, but that they look good and they don't look out of place. Okay, now what Dakota Digital does is they send you some black plugs that they say you can use, or you can put the turn signal indicators and the oil and generator lenses back in it. You can actually illuminate them so that they work. Part of the thing about this is these were in such bad shape, and I talked to the owner about it. He says do whatever's easiest. Well, this may not be the easiest, but I just think it will make a better looking dash, better looking instrument cluster if we black them out. Now the instructions say to use silicone, RTV silicone to glue these in place. I got to thinking about it, and I elected to not do that. In this way, should you ever want to go back to a stock dash, he can. so the instructions don't explicitly say anything about this ring or the dum-dum that was in the original deal, but in order to make this work, you kind of have to leave both of those out. Okay, so I ran into a bit of a snag in that there is no identification as to which terminal goes where on the wiring harness. I made the assumption that since it has to go out to the gas gauge and the temperature gauge, that this one in the center would go to the speedometer, and this one right here is a different style of connector, so that one goes to the main harness. That being said, I wasn't sure whether it made a difference on these which gauge they went to, because basically they could go to either gauge. And so what I did was I made a quick call to Dakota Digital, and they have a really good helpline. Talked to a gentleman, I won't say his name, but he was very helpful. He says it doesn't make any difference, that the small brain inside of all of this reads the address, does not read the wire, and therefore you can hook this wire up over here and this wire up over here, and it'll work just the same. So with that, I've got this harness on here ready to go. The other thing that this has, and I'm not sure that I'm going to hook it up just yet, it's got a warning buzzer. I think I'm going to leave it off for now, because I am not going to be installing this just now, because I'm going to be doing the I'm going to be doing the steering column, and I kind of want to get, well, and I've also got to integrate the wiring of this with the wiring of the MSD box, with the wiring of the Holly Sniper system, with the original wiring harness in the 57, because he's actually going to keep the glass tube wiring harness or a fuse panel in there. So with that though, this is ready to reinstall in the car, and I'm bringing it in close so you can get a good look at it. And yeah, I mean, this is just really nice looking. I got it cleaned up. Like I said, it's not show quality, but it does look good. And so it'll look good without looking out of place in the car. And that's kind of what you want to do, unless you're doing a full resto or a full custom. So with that said, I'll go ahead and put this in a safe place inside the car, so I know where it's at, and move on to the next project. But for now, thanks again for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Please subscribe if you haven't. Hit that notification bell so you know when the next video is coming out, because I still got a lot of work to do to this. Got to pull the engine out, got to put the new engine and transmission in it. Oh, that's the other thing I've got to integrate into this wiring is the I think I have to integrate it into this wiring is the controls for the 4L60E, because that's got a standalone controller for it, and I believe that's where I'm going to get my signal for the speedometer. So we'll find out as time goes by on that. But for right now, hit that notification bell so you'll know when the next video is coming up, and like the video. If you got any questions or comments, be sure to put them in the comment section. And other than that, for now, Chopper Bob out.